Fisher 252, Fox Sports Radio Update. I'm Chloe Panichelli. The East Carolina Pirate football team grabbed their first victory of the 2025 season this past Saturday, but head coach Blake Harrell and the program have already turned their attention to this week's upcoming opponent, Coastal Carolina.
We turned all our attention to our opponent in Coastal. And, Coastal Carolina's coming off a win as well. Offensively, they're going to remind you of kind of a Mike Leach offense. Their offense coordinator is Drew Hollinshead. He was with Mike Leach at Washington State and Mississippi State. He was previously the offense coordinator at Western Kentucky. So he's going to spread it out and do some Mike Leach type stuff. Although, as you say that, they ran the ball for 263 yards this past weekend, which is a little bit, you think of Mike Leach as an air raid guy, but he also liked to run the football as well. The two quarterbacks they used to this past week was MJ Morris. MJ Morris and Tad Hudson, the two they used, both four-star kids out of high school. MJ started his career at NC State, transferred to Maryland after that, and was the starting quarterback game one this year for Coastal.
The Pirates in Coastal Carolina will get things started Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. And with your 252 Fox Sports Radio Update, I'm Chloe Panichelli.
The drive starts right now.
Starts right now. Just living the dream.
Here's a guy who gets paid to talk.
1, 2, hold it back, you know what I mean? 1, 2, 3.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is The Drive on 252 Fox Sports Radio, 107.5 FM, WWNB, 1490 AM, worldwide, 252foxsports.com, or the TuneIn Radio app. Go to your Google or Apple store, TuneIn Radio. It's absolutely free. Once you've downloaded it, hit the search feature. Then you type in WWNB. You can also reach TuneIn via desktop at tunein.com. Same thing, though. Search feature WWNB. Take us anywhere you've got the internet. Plus, if you've got an Alexa device, you can just simply ask Alexa to play WWNB. It's that simple. Find 252 Fox Sports on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. Or you can find 252 Fox Sports on Facebook. Find The Drive with Mark Panichelli on Facebook as well. That's me. I'm Mark Panichelli. Thank you so much for taking time to join me today, whenever. Really do appreciate it. I absolutely do. We've got a fantastic show today. We're going to talk a lot of NC State, Wake Forest, the Thursday night game in the ACC, the two undefeated teams in our state that are going to battle in Winston-Salem, and for good reason, because my guest today is going to be the voice of the Demon Deacons, Stan Cotton. So we're going to discuss that. We'll talk about they've got a new coach in Winston-Salem this year, but this is going to be quite again, ACC/Big Four in-state matchup. Really excited that. So Stan Cotton's going to join me in just a few moments. Really excited to talk about the game because look, I feel like NC State Wake Forest has delivered as a competitive game. What we're going to see this week, I'm interested because I think it's the first real test for Wake Forest this season. And for NC State, they're coming off of East Carolina and Virginia, which again, no disrespect to Kennesaw State and Western Carolina, but again, this is going to be Wake Forest's stiffest challenge thus far. And what's again for NC State, I would say cautiously optimistic because it's Wake Forest, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. But I cannot. Let's at least do this while we're waiting, because we're in this together, you and I. But while we're waiting for Stan Cotton to join me today, wow. I mean, just wow. Primetime football right now, as far as the National Football League in the last two nights, has been unbelievable, to say the least. So as much as I would love to come here right now and tell you, because personally, on a personal level, the fact that my Philadelphia Phillies beat the Mets Finally. Felt like it's been. Anyways, I'll take my personal successes as a sports fan aside, because let's be honest. Man, the best thing I saw last night was probably the best thing you saw last night as well. This is the best thing. This is the best thing I saw last night. This is the best thing that I saw last night. The best thing. The best thing that I saw last night. His name is J.J. McCarthy. And really, we hadn't seen them since Michigan, the Michigan Wolverines and their national championship. And he's been a winner wherever he's been, but the NFL is a whole new thing, right? You don't just walk in the NFL and do really what he did. In fact, no quarterback has ever done that. 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to come back to lift the and again, to choose one play I think is somewhat unfair, because let's be honest, it was a heck of a game last night. But if you didn't see it, J.J. McCarthy, and again, runs it in on that game winner. Let's see. I think I got the play-by-play here.
Thielen in motion. McCarthy keeps. He's got it. And forces his way into the end zone. Touchdown.
Unbelievable game for J.J. McCarthy last night. So just it's game one. So let's, I think everybody, I am interested overnight. I get the update from Fanatics about the hottest selling jersey. And the young quarterback's going to sell a lot of jerseys when it's the year. But I hope that there's some overnight numbers on how many jerseys got sold, how many J.J. McCarthy jerseys got sold. And so, and look, I'm aware of this. If you're a Bears fan, it's a gut punch. You had a lead. And it disappeared, and just felt like maybe it felt easy. So there's a part of this where if you're a Minnesota fan, it's invigorating. What a comeback. And if you're Chicago, it feels like an epic fail and a collapse. And to be honest, as these stories usually go, it's a little bit of both. I mean, it is. It's usually a little bit of both. So I understand the frustration, and I'd love to tell you that I'm one of these, just, as an outside observer, but I think a lot of that it was entertaining, because I think a lot of people who didn't have a rooting interest were, say, wow, that was entertaining. So I, again, to where I started those last 2 nights have been phenomenal with the comebacks. It was the Bills comeback against the Ravens, and then last night with the unbelievable comeback by J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. And that to me is what is impressive about this. The difference is, and I know that's 2 younger quarterbacks, that you have 2 established quarterbacks in the Ravens-Bills game. With Lamar Jackson, you expect big things from Lamar Jackson. And so and as for his counterpart on the other side, Josh Allen, well, him making a comeback, even though that was the first time since 1967 that the Bills had come back from a deficit like that in the fourth quarter. That's still, again, they're established guys. You expect that kind of performance from a Josh Allen. But when you're talking about this game last night, still jury's out, if you will, on the young Caleb Williams, on obviously first game for J.J. McCarthy, and Williams has had a lot more experience. So, again, I understand the Chicago frustration here, and rightfully so. That's one of those games that you let get away. And for first, it was while it was the debut for J.J. McCarthy, his coach has the experience. On the other side, Caleb Williams had the experience, but it was the first head coaching. It was the head coaching debut of Mr. Ben Johnson there. So it was thoroughly entertaining. And again, as I said, I'd love to tell you that I didn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. But shout out to my friends and a longtime friend Jesse, and of course Brad as well. I feel like I always root for the Vikings because of that friendship, unless they're playing the Eagles or something, like I said, some circumstance. So I'd love to tell you that was just an outside observer. Just, I didn't have a dog in the fight, as the saying goes, but I did. And I was, again, slightly. As I said, I'm not saying I'm a full-blown Vikings fan, but I do tend to root for them. That was an unbelievable comeback. And if you're a Vikings fan, it's only game one, but, if you bought a J.J. McCarthy jersey and you're kind of waiting to see, but just like, oh, I got to get one now. Okay, rightfully so. Rightfully so. I think Stan's ready now. I want to welcome the play-by-play voice of Wake Forest football and basketball, and it always feels like it's been too long, but I can't have you on every week. But Stan Cotton, first off, good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today.
Hey, Mark. Hope you're well. It's always good to talk to you, and enjoyed our visit a few weeks ago. One of my few visits to New Bern, but you guys live in a great community down there. I just love it.
Yeah, it was good to catch up and spend a little time, and again, we end up being two old guys talking about which we did earlier before we went on the air too. But it's again good to catch up, and I'm kind of excited too because you get this Thursday night game, so you're on national television. And there's something that I think a lot of people, especially the ABC crowd, you know what I'm talking about, the anybody but Carolina folks, to know that the two undefeated teams still left in the state are not North Carolina, but NC State and Wake Forest, and they're going to battle it out on Thursday night on national television, as I said. And I think it's kind of exciting to start the year off, and I know it's a new era of Wake Forest basketball, and so Wake Forest football. But let's start with the excitement of this game first before I talk about Coach Dickert or any of the new culture. But again, the last time I heard your voice, I know we were talking about the visit, but the last time I heard your voice was on that marathon broadcast from Saturday against Western Carolina, which that was quite an adventure there with all the delays from weather.
Yeah, it was crazy. We've had delays before, but we had a very substantial delay 3 minutes into the game, as you know, and then one at halftime that extended things. And they, everybody tried to shave some off that. They took some time off at halftime. They took 5 minutes off the clock in the fourth quarter. In some ways, it felt like a middle school game. We're just trying to get this in before the sun goes down. But it was a lot of fun, and this game with State is always fun. These two have been playing forever, and the rivalry's been a good one over the years, fairly balanced, regardless of going into the game. One side has a better team than the other. I just, for whatever reason, it's just an old rivalry that I think both fan bases get into. I know that on the Wake Forest side, they certainly get energized regardless of who the coach is to play State. And it's without question the case this week. I mean, Wake's quality of opponent, and this is not to disparage Western Carolina or Kennesaw State, but it really ratchets up this week with NC State. Wolfpack's played a couple of really good opponents and found a way to win both games. And so Wake's got to really dial it up several more notches this week. And I think they will. I think they found out a lot about their team last week and made really good strides, Mark, between that opener and week 2. So I'm hopeful that here in week 3, the Deacs can continue that climb on the way up.
Okay. Yeah. And okay. So I want to kind of go back to the rivalry because I know it's a new coach at Wake Forest. So I got a lot of NC State friends, Stan. So every time I say the two words Wake Forest to them, especially in football season, there's this discomfort on their face. Because Wake Forest has been really successful. And so it's kind of a two-parter. One, what do you think the keys to that have been, and how can Coach Dickert continue that success? It's been, as I said, very interesting. Over the years, as you were talking about, it's been a great rivalry, but in recent times, it feels like when I talk to, as I said, all of my NC State friends, they at least feel, and again, you look at the numbers. Wake Forest has had some success, certainly in Winston-Salem, but just overall against the Wolfpack, been a little thorn in the side. How can they continue that, Stan?
Yeah, I've got a lot of state fans too, but I think it's just one of the big four games. Anytime that Wake State, Carolina, Duke get together, regardless if one side might say it's not much of a rivalry, it is, because there's so much history between these big four teams, and I think that anytime that Wake plays Carolina or State, Duke to a lesser degree, because Duke is more kind of like Wake Forest in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But I think for State and Carolina, it's like, it's that little school up the road, and they just kind of feel like, Wake Forest is the little brother just wanting to tag along and play with you, and you don't want them to come along. And, it's kind of, a burr in the saddle. And then when Wake does win the games, it just, Wake loves it. And the State fans and the Carolina fans, they just can't take it. And so I think that's not lost on Jake Dickert. I mean, he's a Midwest to West Coast guy. But, he comes from Washington State, and that rivalry with Washington's pretty intense. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's been watered down a little bit the last 2-3 years. But and prior to that, he's been involved in rivalry games, and no question, he understands what's about to go down on Thursday night, that this is a Big Four game, that there are bragging rights within the state and all those types of things. So, and he's talked about that this week. So, I think you'll have the Deacs pumped up, ready to go, and I anticipate another, what I would kind of assume, kind of your typical State Wake Forest game, and that's been close one that typically goes to the fourth quarter. May not, but I think more times than not, when these two get together, regardless of records and all those types of things, and the coaches, it just ends up being a pretty good and entertaining football game.
All right, I'm going to go back to the game in a second, but let's focus, because you talked a little bit about Coach Dickert, Jake Dickert, who's taken over this program, and again, I've obviously had the pleasure of talking with Coach Clausen quite a few times when he was there. I haven't yet had a conversation with Coach Dickert, and it's such a small sample size. So honestly, when I like to ask folks about what do you think about about the differences, the contrast, or what's new, what's different, I think it's a better answer probably after the whole season's been played out than to say just after 2 games and after fall camp, et cetera. But let's just do it for the sake right now. So far, what's the biggest difference between and the buzzword now is culture, right? The culture of your program. What's the one thing that stands out as a contrast to Coach Clausen's philosophy to Coach Dickert's?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you're right. I think the proof is in the pudding, and that you make that pudding over the course of 3 months, not 3 weeks. But for those of us around the program, Coach Clausen and his staff were all just so very intelligent and they approached the game that way, and they were so laser focused, and it was just all about football, and not that there aren't a lot of those same characteristics with this staff, but Jake Dickert's the youngest coach in the ACC, and with that youth, there's a lot of enthusiasm and energy that's palpable. You go to a practice and there's music going the whole time, very loud, and there isn't any standing around anywhere. They're running around. The coaches are yelling, the players are yelling. There's just a lot of intense energy is the way I would describe it. Not that there wasn't energy and enthusiasm and all those things with Coach Clausen, there were, but it's just kind of ratcheted up a little bit with Coach Dickert. And I think a good portion of that is, again, his youthfulness. There are, because of the way the landscape of the game has changed with NIL, everybody's got all these new players. I mean, Wake's got, 50 plus new players. And there's that part of the equation where maybe they don't have as much cohesiveness right now and team gelling as there will be after 6 or 7 weeks. So they just replace that with a lot of energy, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Those would be my main points. But Coach Dickert's used to winning, and he says we don't want to have to build our program 2 to 3 years. We want to win now. The first week was a 10-9 rock fight with Kennesaw State, a team that's not used to winning. Last week, I really thought Western Carolina probably went into that game with a chance to win. I think the spread was 1 or 2 points. And Wake just literally ran away from the Catamounts with an incredible ground game. And so, I think Wake feels really, really good about its progress from week 1 to week 2. We'll see if there's more progress this week. There's going to have to be, I think, to make the game with State one of those kind of games that we've talked about, into the fourth quarter. Each team has a chance to win. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. But Coach Dickert's been a lot of fun to be around, as I said, energetic, youthful, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, okay, you touched on the Western Carolina game, at least a portion of the you running away from it, and so okay, there's to go back to the game this Thursday, and again, I think it is going to be the best test so far for this Demon Deacon team, and I looked last week at. For NC State playing Virginia, which again, it was a non-conference game against a conference team, but I thought that was obviously a good barometer to see where NC State was at. It was a very interesting back and forth game. Now, okay, for Wake Forest, I want to say this, and so obviously I got to ask first about making sure he's healthy for this week. But my best kept secret in the ACC is DeMond Claiborne. I don't think he gets enough press. I think he's fantastic. I know he had that rib injury, but again, I looked at last week. NC State, from a defensive standpoint, was a little. Again, I think Virginia's feature guy found some space. I think Taylor. So I think there could be some opportunity, and I'll. And I'm pretty sure Coach Dickert wants to run the football, and that again always opens up things offensively. But that's sort of one of my things here. And again, so it's one, how is the health of Claiborne, and talk about that rushing attack. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest keys on the offensive side of things for Wake Forest is to be able to establish the run.
I think Claiborne's fine. He carried just 3 times in the Kennesaw State game. Mm-hmm. And got his ribs banged up, and so he had to leave the game. And for fans who may not know a whole lot about DeMond Claiborne, he's the guy on the poster. He's the guy. He's the bell cow, and making a lot of money. And he deserves it. He's that kind of player. I mean, last year he took a kickoff against Miami, 100 yards, and you don't outrun the Hurricanes unless you're a really fast guy. He was clocked at, it was like 22.6 miles an hour, the fastest player in college football, according to all these gauges from last year. Take that as you will. He's really fast. Everybody knows that. And he doesn't need a lot of space to make things happen, which he proved last week. He entered the game Carolina. He was really kind of a game time decision. Felt pretty good. Started the game. Well, he rushed for almost 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Took one of them 85 yards. He needs just a little crease, and you can't catch him. And so I think that takes a little pressure off of Wake's offensive line. You get him the ball on the edge or in space, just needing a block from a wide receiver or just a little bitty seal from a tight end, something like that. And he's into the secondary, and all bets are off, because I don't, I would not want to be a safety trying to, run him down. So if Wake can get him in the open field, he can make a lot of things happen, and that'll be the game plan. Whether it's just straight turn and give it to him, little swing passes out of the backfield. I think Wake will use a lot of different ways to get him the ball. Now he won't return kicks this year because I think part of that is they're going to rely so much more on him from the line of scrimmage than Dave Clawson did, last year and year before. So, you don't want your poster guy carrying the ball 45 times a game, because he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's built very well, very strong young man. But I don't think he can take a battering, carrying the ball 40, 45 times a game. Not that he's easy to get a big hit on. He's not. But you get my point. But he's fine. I think his ribs are good. His legs are certainly fine. And that's those are his weapons without question.
Yeah, he's fun to watch, without a doubt. So, and then on the defensive side of the ball, I think, C.J. Bailey for NC State is, again, and quarterbacks a lot of times in college football present this challenge. So it's not uncommon week in and week out to have to face these guys who can do well with drop back throws or making, quick read throws, but can also, even when they're being pressured, do well at making these unscheduled passes or unscheduled throws. And then again, to adapt and to run, even plan runs. So defensively, and I think that could be the key for me, for the Deacons this week is how much they can contain C.J. Bailey, who, again, if it's the age old, it's not, rocket surgery, right? I mean, if you can really give the opposing quarterback problems, I mean, you're going to be successful defensively most of the time. And when I look at NC State, again, I'm not saying he's the only weapon there. They've got a plethora of issues that Wake Forest will have to deal with on Thursday night. But I think, again, just start with football 101 from the defensive side, get to the quarterback and make it a rough night for him.
Yeah. And that's, Coach Dickert addressed that earlier this week, with the media. That's easier said than done, right? With Bailey. Coach Dickert was talking about him. He said, last year, State it was kind of an apprentice type of year for him. And now they've given him the keys to the car, and, the thing about Bailey is he's a big target. He's 6'6", but skinny and quick feet, moves around, and he's hard to reel in. And he's so good post snap, makes, pretty good decisions with the ball when he's kind of roaming around back there and has to ad lib and use his athleticism, which he has a lot of. And so that's kind of the deal. I mean, I think Wake will bring a lot of pressure on him, but I was watching this especially the Dallas Cowboy game earlier, the start of the year. The Cowboys were, blitzing, but they were kind of out of control. They'd run right by the quarterback and then he'd just run upfield, Jalen Hurts. And I think Wake will bring some pressure Thursday night, but it's got to be kind of controlled aggression, if you know what I mean. Because if you can easily run right by this guy because he'll just a little juke and then he's gone. So you have to pick your spots, and when you do come after him, just kind of settle down before you just run right by him. That doesn't do you any good. So yeah, it certainly starts with him. And NC State has done a nice job. I think I don't think Dave Doran gets enough credit, but they always have really good athletes, and kind of the chore for them is to kind of herd all those cats. If you can get those guys to play together, then that's a formidable opponent. And State has good players everywhere. They really do. They're fairly young in a lot of their key positions, but young talent doesn't mean it's not good talent. It is. And so it'll be interesting to see how Wake kind of tries to hold C.J. Bailey at bay and make somebody else, do the damage if you can.
Yeah, Dave Doran is again. And look, every program has this, right? You're going to have these people that either support the guy, and then there's the people that don't support the guy who's ever the coach. And so I do hear a lot of Dave Doran consistently. The amount of, especially when I look at them the last 5+ years, just in recency, the amount of different players, and again, this is every program has to deal with this, but again, that and then the staffing changes that are constantly happening with assistants and all that, and still they consistently get into bowl games, and it's not as easy as it looks, and again, a lot of times it's never enough, right? So I think he's done a great job at NC State, but again. Again, he's on the opposing sidelines. So if you're a Deacon fan, obviously you're not a big Dave Doran fan. But as I said, I certainly huge respect. I think he's done a fantastic job at NC State. And I think for all the detractors of him, it's one of those you're going to appreciate him. If he's ever gone from there, trust me, you'll look back and think, yeah, I was probably a little hard on Coach Doran when, again, consistently, as you were talking about, puts athletes out on the field and is always a problem. I mean, the NC State, there've been very few 2-win seasons, during his tenure. I don't think there's been any, to be honest. So.
Well, he's been around a long, long time.
Yeah.
13 years now, I guess, at State.
Yeah.
And you just talk to other coaches and they'll tell you, how much they respect him and his coaches. Look, college football these last several years, not just the last 2 with NIL and all that stuff, it's hard to win a game, man. It really is. I don't care whom you play, where you play them. It's hard to win games. Everybody's got players now and, facilities and all that. And now, especially these last 2-3 years with, taking the shackles off the players in terms of their ability to transfer and then all the money and all this kind of stuff. It's just difficult to win games. And I think, Doran's been around college football long enough. He's got that kind of old school mentality that he's been able to mesh with kind of this new age of the game. And that's a pretty good mix.
I'm telling you. The Fraser Crane Award this week for the show is going to go to Mr. Stan Cotton because he dropped a whom on us, and I love it. That Tennessee education, Tennessee journalism school. That was some good stuff right there. Not bad for us country boys to drop a whom on folks every now and then, right?
As long as you drop it in the right place, right? I mean, I was an English minor at Tennessee. I couldn't add 2 and 2. So you take the good with the bad.
That is good stuff. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit of let's zoom out for a minute. And again, early, we're only a couple weeks into the season, but again, we don't have much time. I always say college football is we get so excited for it. It is the shortest season of anything. It only lasts 3 months. By the time we're in Thanksgiving, it's over. And so you got to really enjoy it. But I know we're only 2 weeks in, but there's always the everybody's eyeball test of who's the big bad conference. And so Big Ten and the SEC, Big 12. But from a standpoint, I feel like the ACC has represented very well throughout. So if you go, whether it's the teams that are so-called the top end or whatever, or the teams below, I just think, again, my early impressions is everybody has these quote air quote opinions about how good a conference is, how deep a conference is, how it can compete, and who's the best. Right now, I think the health of the ACC right now, and again, it's early, looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, I think a lot of people right now to look at, as the bell cow, and the team that's going to have to kind of carry the flag again for Wake, rather for the ACC on a national scale. And, I think, the Tigers have enough talent to be really, really good and have a chance to be there at the end of the year. But they've looked, a little sketchy first couple of weeks, but who doesn't?
Right.
Right now, as you said, it is awful early. And these coaches can do wonders from week 1 to week 4. They get together and they're able to analyze it from all different angles, and more times than not, they can get things fixed. They can get the right people on the field. When you have so many new players, not that Clemson has as much as others, but it takes maybe a little longer now to get the right combinations on the field. But I mean, look what Florida State was able to do right out of the chute against Alabama. That was a huge win for the ACC against national competition, against the Southeastern Conference that everybody tries to say is the greatest thing ever. So, and they've got great teams. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm an SEC guy growing up, at Tennessee and all those kinds of things. I think the SEC is a great league. If you argue with that, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. But we could talk all day long about the ACC's reputation over the last couple of years, how it's taken some shots, especially in basketball. We could talk about that all day. For instance, Wake last year finishes 4th in the ACC and can't get in the tournament.
Yeah.
If you would have said that 10 years ago, people would have laughed you out of the room, but things have changed.
No, just not to interrupt, but to just say what I've been saying that I feel like the football health has been okay and people have overreacted that it's not good. Whereas to me, the basketball reputation of the league has really diminished, and that does bother me exactly for the reason that you just said. If the 4th best team in the ACC can't get into the NCAA tournament, I don't know what world I'm living in, Stan.
And people will say, well, yeah, you didn't do this against the non-conference. You didn't. Oh, but Wake beat Michigan, won half their road games, won 13 games in the league. But you can make arguments all day long about whatever side of the fence you want to be on. But without question, the ACC image has tarnished over the last 2-3 years in both sports. So, Florida State needs to be good in football. Clemson needs to be good. Virginia Tech needs to get better. All these teams need to get better. Carolina's got to do well. I get it. I understand it. The ACC is not perfect. You and I are probably a little biased, and then it's probably because we see it and we cover it day to day. We know how good these teams are, but you're always going to be compared against. If you have opportunities against teams outside of your league that are highly thought of and you don't do well, you're going to take a shot or two. So I get it. I get all that stuff but it's fun to talk about. But the bottom line is just go out and win. You find a way to win. As I said earlier, it's hard to win games, and don't get ahead of yourself. Just give everybody your best shot week after week, and if you win enough, it'll add up, so that at the end of the year, you'll get your due. You'll get your due.
Yes. And again, we're talking to Stan Cotton. I'm talking to Stan Cotton, and you're listening to it. But feel free to feel like it's a conversation we're all having. But before I let you go, I know, and you've been so generous with your time, and I really do appreciate it, Stan. You've always been great about that. But I have to ask you, because you mentioned this Dallas Cowboys game I guess you were watching the Jalen Hurts game, and I am too, because I'm an Eagles fan. But I got to tell you that the beginning of the game, and I don't want to, I don't know why the incessant need, and I'm guilty too. I've called it this already. I don't know why we have to put gate at the end of every scandal that comes about, but spit gate or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
I've said, I've watched so much football, and it's not that I'm not aware that things like this happen. It's just usually very it's covered up well. TV doesn't, but again, that was so out in front for everybody to see. The official was right there. And I've just, I feel like you're one of the people who's probably maybe watched more football than me. And so I value your opinion on this. Have you ever seen anything like that in your life? And again, just to be on the stage, I just thought it was, wow. I'm still kind of shocked and disappointed for sure. And again, I'm not one of these cancel people. I think hopefully the Dak and Jalen can represent themselves better than they did in that moment. But wow, that was bizarre, was it not, Stan?
Yeah, that was crazy, and I think we see the edges of it, on television. We don't know the whole context. We don't know what, if anything, went on prior to that. Now that doesn't excuse anyone,
right,
from spitting on anybody. I don't care what the situation is. I thought it looked to me like Dak, spits on the ground. They all do that all night long.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the fence, the guy spits on Dak Prescott, and the official was standing right there. And I'm sure that he felt he had enough context to say, whoa, 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 that was way over the line. You're gone. So, but it's tough to comment when you don't know the full context. Yeah. You can only kind of assume some things, but, and I'm biased. I'm a Cowboy guy, and didn't spit on anybody. The other guy did. So that's all I know. And, why these guys have to spit so doggone much, I'm a huge golf freak, and it just used to drive me insane when Tiger Woods would be on the green and spit on the green. My dad would have run me out the back with a hickory switch if I'd have done that. But I mean, somebody coming up from behind them is going to be putting on that green in a minute, yes. Tiger, and you're spitting all over it. But I don't know. That was an unusual way for the NFL season to begin. And, I get it. The Cowboys, man, they're drama. It's always drama with the Cowboys. It drives me crazy. But I've been a fan of the Cowboys since about 1968 or 9. So
wow.
I've been with the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And, regardless of kind of what's going on, that's my team.
Hey.
And we've been struggling for years, trying to get a Super Bowl back. But, we'll see. I thought Prescott looked pretty good, and I thought Dallas did really well against Philadelphia in that game, did better than I thought they would. So it gives me a little hope.
Yeah, I thought, again, it was a lot of people predicted because again, based on last year, and you and I know from football, just in college as well, and especially in college, because you have the limitations of how much eligibility you can have year to year. All these teams are always different, but the one thing constant in that regard with Philadelphia and Dallas is these divisional games. They're brutal. And so I wasn't expecting a blowout like a lot of people were, and it gives me a good chance to segue back into what we're as we get ready to end our conversation. But man, it's like this with NC State and Wake Forest. That familiarity, even though these teams are different than they were last year, different than they were 4 or 5 years ago, the fans and all that stuff, and there's just so much. As I said, that when you get that, whether it's a division rivalry in the NFL or a conference rivalry, and really this is sort of even closer because, as you were talking, as we call it, the old schoolers call it a Big Four rivalry because it's the in-state schools. There's just something about it, and I'm excited, and I'm glad it's on national TV. And so it's a 7:30 kick, I believe, on Thursday night.
Yep, 7:30, and looking forward to it. And I'm glad the game's in Winston. Wake's schedule is favorable, and Wake will need some breaks, I think, Thursday night against State, and maybe being in Winston that'll be enough to tip the scale a little bit so that it's maybe more even than if you look on paper. You might think. I don't know what. Not that I'm into spreads all that much, but Vegas doesn't miss it much. And I'm sure State will be favored a little bit.
7 points is what it is right now, just for entertainment purposes only.
That surprises me a little bit. I thought it might be closer to 10. But Wake's probably getting some favor for being at home. So we'll see. But I think it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get back on the air after that marathon Saturday against Western Carolina. But looking forward to get back on the air and experiencing another Wake State game. Should be fun.
Yes, and for everybody out there, yes, keep staying in your thoughts and prayers. No lightning in the area in Winston-Salem on Thursday night. So, but we'll be tuning in. And as I like to do, you just turn the sound off on whoever they got on that 4-letter network. I don't care. You just turn the radio broadcast of the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. I even heard an ad, I think, on your broadcast where you can do that. You can sync those things up. So that technology is a wonderful thing. So.
Yes, syncmygame.com. And you can do that with any school that you're a fan of. You can get it to where the radio is synced up with the video there and follow your favorite team and listen to your favorite announcers. It's a good thing.
Yes, that's right. So for all you Deacon fans, you want to hear Stan do the game? Boom. Just like that. So, Stan, thank you so much again. You've always been wonderful. As I said, we're going to tune in. Take care, and let's not, as I say every time, let's not make it as long of a distance between the time we're talking now and the time we talk again.
You bet, Mark. Always a pleasure to talk to you. It was great to see you a few weeks ago. And whenever you want to come to Winston, hang out in the radio booth, you let me know, and we'll get you there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
You bet.
I got to tell you, Thursday is already presenting. It's the first football viewing challenge for me of the year. And what happens is there's sometimes a lot of football for sure. That you can have multiple football options. So on Thursday there's an NFL game and a college football game, both of which are very interesting to me. And I think for a lot of the listeners as well. Yes, because we've been talking the whole day today about NC State Wake Forest, and I would assume a lot of you out there are interested in that for sure. But then at the same time, that starts at 7:30. Then at 8:15, the NFL's Thursday Night Football, and it's Commanders Packers. And I know Thursday night is oftentimes this barren wasteland where football in the NFL has some the non-sexy matchups. But this is not that. This is Commanders, Packers, 2 playoff teams from last year, 2 teams who have playoff aspirations and legitimate playoff aspirations for this year, 2 young quarterbacks, Micah Parsons, who's very familiar. There's so much to like about that. So then I got NC State, and again, we've spoken all day about this game. I'm very excited about it. And then on a personal note for me, and this is also what happens during football season, is there's always the overlapping of other sports. And right now it's baseball. In a few weeks, it's going to be NBA and NHL. There'll be and college basketball. And so all of those will take place at the same time. And so if you're interested in, say, North Carolina Tar Heel basketball or the Lakers or the Celtics or the Carolina Hurricanes or right now, for me, the Philadelphia Phillies, who are taking on the New York Mets in a pretty big game on Thursday as they're trying to wrap up the National League East and secure a playoff spot. And, of course, it overlaps with football. It's going to be on Fox television. It's going to be on national television. And so I have just these lone pair of eyeballs, and yet I have 3 major choices to watch. Now, we all can't live like Paul Whittington and have, a big man cave with 18 TVs. Brian Hanks also, I remember, has a pretty nice setup over there with multiple TVs. And see, maybe that's it. Maybe I need to stop complaining and just upgrade my situation where I have multiple TVs. And then that way I just say, hey, well, you know what? We put them all on. We put all the games on. And then I just watch all of them. And again, as I said, probably for what, again, my personal feelings are going to, because again, we're winding down the regular season in baseball. And I know for you folks listening, they're like, it's football season. How dare you talk baseball? Fine. I know there are some baseball people who are like, yes, I feel the same way. You know what I'm talking about? You're a baseball fan and a football fan. So if you're football only, I understand. You're like, okay, one track thing, understandable. Maybe you just have the football crisis. I got to pick one of those games. Understandable. But for some of us, and I know, look, that's not the only major league game and we've got pennant chases. So baseball fans that are also football fans, you know what I'm saying. You're picking up what I'm putting down. Help me out here, schedule. And the schedule makers are doing the best they can. Let's be honest. Listen, these are good problems to have. In a world that we really have problems, and some of these problems are gigantic problems and real and serious problems. Sports has always been my favorite escape of those, and I'm sure a lot of you the same way. But let's be honest, when I say problem, it's a good problem to have. And sometimes you should embrace the good problems because there's so many bad ones that no one wants to embrace. So I'm actually excited at the idea that all of these games are coming on at one time, and it's my challenge to stay on top of it and be able to soak up as much of it as I can, because I am thoroughly interested in a grand way in all three of these games. As I said, from my personal level, I've gone this whole season, Phillies and Mets, and I'm in for that. But man, it's NC State, Wake Forest. It is one of my. I love ACC football, and I love these kind of matchups, especially when we get the in-state schools. And I am an NFL fan, like you. I have NFL problems, and so this matchup between the Commanders and the Packers. That's Thursday night. We're almost what would it be, about 50 hours, 50 plus hours away from having this great problem of a busy Thursday night of just amazing sports. So, anyways, I had to share with everybody that I'm kind of excited about what again. I think the real truth is, because many of you listening have gone through this problem. And it's funny. It's like I'm not even listening, because I talk to these people all the time and they say, you know what you need? You need to put another television in there. And it seems weird, right? Why do I need? And most of the time I don't need two televisions, because again, I've only got one set of eyes. And while I can do this thing that makes my eyes look in different directions, it's a little, it'd be hard to focus. So anyways, I am really, really excited. Until then, I'm just going to watch Phillies and Mets tonight, and figure out if I can move this, just move another TV into the living room. I mean, I don't have anybody to argue with about it. I don't think anybody's going to step in here and be like, hey, you stop that right now. That's crazy talk. So I want to thank Stan Cotton for joining me again today in my nonsense. I tried to be straight up with him, but thank you for putting up with my nonsense as I was trying to eat up about 3 or 4 minutes before I needed to get off the air. But it is a good problem to have, and if you haven't realized, Thursday is going to be an awesome day of sport. But tomorrow on the show, David Fernandez is going to join me, Athletic Director, West Craven Athletics. Should be a lot of fun. We'll discuss.
The Drive with Mark Panichelli is an exclusive, original presentation of the 252 Network.